A perfect life can be the most beautiful lie. From the outside, I had it all. A penthouse overlooking Central Park, a billion-dollar company I built from scratch, and a handsome, loving husband. But what happens when the man you trust becomes the monster in your story? What do you do when he leads you into the heart of darkness and leaves you to die? This is a tale of survival, betrayal, and a vengeance colder than the Bayou water he left me in. A story that proves the deepest swamps aren't in the wild, but in the human heart. My name is Amelia Hayes. 12 years ago, I married Ethan, a brilliant and charismatic history professor at Columbia. Back then, we were just two ambitious kids in New York City with big dreams. A horrific car accident shortly after our wedding changed everything. The drunk driver stole my ability to have children, or so the doctors said. The trauma forged a new kind of steel within me. I poured all my pain and determination into building Verdant Clean, a sustainable commercial cleaning empire. While I conquered the corporate world, Ethan became my quiet support system, the stable ground beneath my soaring ambition. He handled our home, our life, while I built our fortune. I thought we were a team. I thought his love was my reward. I never saw the resentment simmering just beneath his perfect, supportive smile. The morning air in our Manhattan penthouse was crisp and clear, but a fog had settled between me and Ethan. It had been there for months. We sat at the long marble dining table, the city skyline, a dazzling backdrop to our silence. He finally looked up from his tablet, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. You know, Amelia, you finally closed the Apex Tower deal. You deserve a real break, not just a weekend in the Hamptons. Something different. His voice was smooth, persuasive. He was always so thoughtful, always anticipating my needs. But this time, it felt rehearsed. A strange premonition, cold and sharp, pricked at my skin. I tried to dismiss it as exhaustion. I'd been working 18-hour days for months. A vacation was exactly what I needed. Or so I let myself believe, ignoring the alarm bells that had just started to ring softly in the back of my mind. A few days later, he presented the plan. It was a luxury eco-lodge, deep in the Louisiana Bayou. It's completely off the grid, he said, showing me pictures of cypress trees draped in Spanish moss and cabins with panoramic swamp views. No cell service, no distractions. Just us. The idea was both terrifying and alluring. To be completely disconnected from my company felt like cutting off a limb. But the thought of reconnecting with Ethan, of finding that spark we'd lost somewhere between board meetings and academic conferences, was a powerful lure. Clara can handle everything for a week, can't she? He pressed, referring to my hyper-efficient assistant. I nodded slowly, the images of the murky water and dense, unfamiliar wilderness filling me with a strange mix of excitement and dread. I wanted to trust him. I wanted to believe this was about us. The flight to New Orleans was tense. I tried to hold his hand, but he pulled away, feigning the need to read some research papers. The air in Louisiana hit us like a wet blanket, thick with the scent of humidity and unseen blossoms. A private car drove us for hours, the urban sprawl giving way to endless wetlands. When we arrived at the Cypress Haven Lodge, it was breathtaking, rustic elegance carved into the wilderness. The owner, a man named Jackson, greeted us. He had kind, weathered eyes and a handshake as solid as an old oak. He looked at me with genuine warmth, then his gaze shifted to Ethan, and for a fleeting moment I saw his smile tighten, a flicker of appraisal or maybe suspicion. He showed us to our secluded cabin, the boardwalk echoing our steps over the dark, mysterious water below. That night, the sounds of the bayou, a chorus of frogs and insects, felt less like a lullaby and more like a warning. The first few days were a blur of forced relaxation. Ethan had a full itinerary, kayaking through narrow water trails, guided nature walks, bird watching. He was constantly active, constantly pushing us to do more, see more. There was no time for the quiet, intimate conversations I craved. He seemed to be searching for something, his eyes scanning the dense foliage, the murky water's edge. Whenever Jackson was near, offering a tip or sharing a local story, Ethan would become possessive. pulling me close with a proprietary arm. Jackson would just nod politely, his observant gaze missing nothing. I started to feel like a pawn in a game I didn't understand. The vacation was turning into a performance, and my exhaustion was growing deeper than just the physical exertion. It was a weariness of the soul. Want to rest, Ethan? Can't we just sit on want to rest, Ethan? Can't we just sit on the porch and talk? My voice was pleading. An ugly expression crossed his face, a flash of pure frustration. Fine, he snapped, his tone sharp and cold. Do what you want. He turned and stormed out of the cabin. I was stunned. In 12 years, he had never spoken to me like that. Shaken, I decided to go for a walk by myself, along a different, easier trail Jackson had pointed out. I needed to clear my head, to understand the man my husband had become. The path was narrow, winding deeper into the swamp. The air grew still and heavy. Lost in thought, I didn't watch where I was going. My foot slipped on a patch of wet moss, and I stumbled off the path, plunging up to my knee in thick, cold mud. Panic seized me instantly. The mud was like quicksand, a viscous, greedy thing that sucked at my leg. I tried to pull free, but my other foot sank as well. The more I struggled, the deeper I went. It was a primordial fear, the terror of being swallowed by the earth. I was completely alone. No one knew where I was. I screamed, the sound swallowed by the dense cypress and hanging moss. Just as true despair began to set in, I heard a twig snap. I looked up, my heart leaping with relief. It was Ethan. He was standing at the edge of the solid ground watching me. Ethan, thank God! Help me, I'm stuck! I cried out, tears of relief streaming down my face. But he didn't move. He just stood there, a strange, unreadable expression on his face. The relief curdled into ice in my stomach. He walked slowly to the edge of the bog, his movements deliberate, calm. He crouched down, his face now a mask of cold satisfaction. This is the perfect spot, he said, his voice soft, almost conversational. I've been looking for it all week. I stared at him, my mind refusing to process his words. What are you talking about? Ethan, help me. The mud was at my waist now, its chilling embrace tightening. Help you? He let out a short, bitter laugh. Oh, Amelia. For 12 years, my entire life has been about helping you, the supportive husband in the shadow of the great CEO, the man who gave up his own ambitions so you could have yours. I'm so tired of it. Every word was a blow, more painful than the cold seeping into my bones. This wasn't my husband. This was a stranger, a monster wearing his face. His eyes were devoid of any warmth. Your business, our money, it's all yours. The prenup was your brilliant idea, remember? I get almost nothing in a divorce. But as your grieving widower, I get everything. The company, the penthouse, the freedom. He smiled, a truly grotesque sight. Chloe will be so pleased. She's pregnant, you see. We're going to have a family. Something you could never give me. The name hit me. Chloe. A young, adoring student from his seminar. The pieces of his late nights, his secret phone calls, his sudden detachment, all clicked into place with horrifying clarity. He wasn't just leaving me. He had planned to erase me. The betrayal was so immense. It was a physical force, pushing the air from my lungs and pulling me deeper into the mire. You won't get away with this, You won't get away with this, I whispered, my voice hoarse. He just shrugged. I've been in the lodge all day, worried about my wife who was feeling unwell. Everyone saw me. By the time they find you, if they ever do, I'll be back in New York, a heartbroken husband forced to take over his late wife's empire. It's a sad story, but people love a sad story. He stood up, dusted off his knees, and looked down at me one last time, the mud now creeping up my chest. This is where you belong, Amelia. In the mud. Then he turned and walked away, whistling a cheerful little tune. The sound echoed through the trees as the swamp continued to pull me under. As darkness began to cloud my vision, a single, furious thought burned through the fear. I will not die here. I remembered something from a survival show. Distribute your weight. I forced my panicked body to relax, to try and lie back on the surface. My hand, flailing for purchase, brushed against something solid, a root. I grabbed it, my fingers screaming in protest as I clung on. My strength was fading. Just as my grip began to fail, I heard a voice low and urgent. "Hold on! Just hold on!" Through the haze, I saw a figure, Jackson, lying flat on the ground, extending a long, sturdy branch towards me. "Grab it! I've got you!" His voice was a lifeline in the suffocating silence. Hope, fierce and desperate, surged through me. I reached out, my fingers wrapping around the wood just as my own strength gave out completely. Waking up was like swimming up from a great depth. I was in a clean, bright room, the antiseptic smell sharp in my nostrils. An IV was taped to my hand. Jackson was sitting in a chair by the bed, his expression etched with concern. "You're in a private clinic in Baton Rouge," he explained softly. "My friend is the doctor here. You've been out for almost 5 days. Hypothermia? Shock?" He trailed off, then his eyes met mine, full of a quiet anger. "I saw him, Amelia. I had a bad feeling when you went out alone, so I followed at a distance. I heard everything he said to you." The memory came crashing back, and a sob tore from my throat. It wasn't just the near-death experience. It was the utter demolition of my life, of the man I thought I knew. I had nothing left. I was completely and utterly broken. A doctor came in then, a kind-faced man in his 50s. "Amelia, I'm Dr. Evans. We've run some tests. Physically, you're going to recover. But there's something else you need to know." He paused, looking at me with gentle eyes. "You're pregnant. About 12 weeks along." The words didn't register at first. They were impossible. A mistake. "No," I whispered. "That can't be. The doctors—" "After my accident," Dr. Evans smiled. "Medicine isn't always an exact science. Miracles happen. Your baby is a fighter. Despite the trauma and the hypothermia, the heartbeat is strong. Pregnant. A child. A secret I didn't even know I was keeping. A tiny, resilient life growing inside me. Ethan's child. The irony was a bitter pill. He left me to die, ignorant that he was also condemning his own unborn baby. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The broken pieces didn't disappear, but they began to reform, crystallizing around this impossible new reality. It wasn't over. It was just beginning. Jackson stayed by my side, a steady, grounding presence. He'd already contacted my assistant, Clara, and discreetly filled her in. Clara, loyal to a fault, was horrified and immediately switched into crisis mode. On a secure video call, her face a mixture of fury and relief, she became my general in New York. "He's been calling," she said, her voice tight with rage. "Playing the worried husband. He's trying to get access to your personal accounts." Jackson then laid out a plan, his voice calm, but his eyes hard as stone. "My younger brother Leo is in New York right now," he said. "He has a certain set of skills. He's very persuasive, especially with women like this Chloe." A plan for revenge began to take shape. It wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about protecting my child and everything I had built. Ethan wanted my empire. I was going to make sure he was left with nothing but the ruins of his own making. While I recovered in the quiet Louisiana clinic, the first phase of the plan launched in the bustling heart of New York City. Leo, Jackson's brother, was everything Ethan wasn't. Young, effortlessly charming, with the kind of restless energy that suggested old money and a life of adventure. He accidentally ran into Chloe at a high-end coffee shop near her apartment building, an address Clara had easily procured. He was driving a rented Aston Martin, dressed in a custom suit, and pretended to be an international venture capitalist in town for a few weeks. To a girl like Chloe, who craved status and wealth above all else, he was a walking fantasy. He was exactly the kind of man she had always dreamed of, and she was hooked before he even finished his espresso. Leo played his part to perfection. He showered Chloe with a level of luxury Ethan could only provide by siphoning my funds. He took her to Michelin-star restaurants she'd only read about, exclusive rooftop bars with breathtaking views, and shopping sprees on Fifth Avenue, where the price tags were meaningless. He listened to her complain about her older benefactor, nodding sympathetically. "A man should be proud of a woman like you," Leo would say, his voice a convincing purr. "He shouldn't hide you away." He planted the seeds of dissatisfaction expertly. Chloe, who had already faked a pregnancy to secure her future, saw a massive upgrade. The stuffy professor with his complicated life was starting to look like a very bad investment. Meanwhile, Ethan was still stuck in Louisiana. The local police had opened a missing persons case, and he was the star witness. He played the part of the devastated husband flawlessly, his academic poise lending him an air of tragic credibility. He gave interviews, expressed his undying love for me, and praised my business acumen. "I just hope she's safe," he'd say, his voice thick with fake emotion. "Her company was her baby. I have to get back to protect it for her." He was itching to get back to New York and claim his prize, but Jackson made an anonymous tip to the lead detective, suggesting they look into the couple's finances and a possible affair. It wasn't enough to make him a suspect, but it was enough to tangle his departure in bureaucratic red tape. He was trapped, forced to wait while my trap was being set. To our penthouse. She contacted my lawyers, informing them of a hostile takeover attempt, and had them freeze all joint accounts and credit cards under a clause in our prenup regarding infidelity. Ethan's access to my money was cut off completely. He wouldn't know it until he tried to use a card. Clara also prepared a dossier on him, compiling evidence of his affair with Chloe, tracking his spending on her, and documenting his attempts to access company assets after my disappearance. She was meticulous, driven by a cold, protective rage on my behalf. The foundations of Ethan's new life were being dismantled before he even had a chance to build it. After a week, the police in Louisiana finally cleared Ethan to leave. They had found no evidence of foul play. It was just another tragic case of a tourist lost in the wilderness. He boarded the plane to New York, his mind filled with visions of his new life as a wealthy widower. He imagined selling Verdant clean for a fortune, travelling the world with Chloe, and raising the child he believed was on the way. He was a man who thought he had won. He had outsmarted everyone, especially the brilliant wife he'd grown to resent. As the plane descended towards JFK, he felt a surge of triumph. The final act of his perfect crime was about to begin. He had no idea he was flying directly into the perfectly constructed nightmare we had built for him. His first sign that something was wrong came when his credit card was declined for the taxi from the airport. Annoyed, he paid with the last of his cash, assuming it was a bank error. He arrived at our penthouse, tired but expectant, ready to begin his new life. He entered the security code for the private elevator. Access denied. He tried again. Access denied. Confused and angry, he called the doorman, who informed him coldly that per Miss Hayes's new security protocol, his access had been revoked. "Miss Hayes," Ethan stammered, his blood running cold. "But she's—" The doorman cut him off. "I only follow my instructions, sir." Stunned, he tried to call Chloe. The call went straight to voicemail. Panic, a feeling he thought he'd left in the Bayou, began its icy crawl up his spine. He finally got through to Chloe on her 5th try. Her voice was distant and cold. "Ethan, I can't do this anymore," she said, the words sounding rehearsed. "I've met someone else, someone my own age, who isn't afraid to be with me in public, who can give me the life I deserve." Ethan was reeling. "But the baby! Our baby!" he choked out. There was a pause and then a cruel little laugh. "Oh, that! There is no baby, Ethan. I just told you what you wanted to hear. I'm sorry, but it's over." She hung up. In the space of an hour, his entire future had evaporated. No money, no penthouse, no adoring girlfriend, no baby. He was standing on a Manhattan sidewalk with a single suitcase and the crushing weight of what he had done. He had murdered his wife for a fantasy that had just dissolved into thin air. The next morning, he received a formal email from my lawyer summoning him to the apartment for an urgent marital matter. Desperate and confused, he agreed. When the doorman let him in, he found the penthouse strangely quiet. He walked into the living room, and his world stopped. I was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, bathed in the morning light. I was alive. I had never been more alive. I had turned to face him, my hand resting protectively on my slightly rounded stomach. The shock on his face was his first punishment. It was a visceral, soul-shattering terror, the look of a man seeing a ghost he had created with his own 2 hands. "Hello, Ethan," I said, my voice as calm and steady as a frozen lake. "Surprised to see me?" He couldn't speak. He just stared, his face draining of all colour, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. He looked from my face to my stomach and back again, his mind struggling to comprehend the impossible. "How?" he finally managed to whisper. "The swamp! I saw you." "You saw what you wanted to see," I cut him off. "You left me to die. You left us to die." I emphasised the word, letting it hang in the air between us. His eyes widened as the final, devastating truth dawned on him. This wasn't just my survival. It was the survival of the child he never knew he had, the one he had so callously tried to destroy. The grief and triumph he had performed for the world were nothing compared to the genuine shock and horror he was feeling now. From the doorway, a calm voice spoke. "I believe you have a few things to sign." It was Jackson, looking completely out of place in his rugged outdoor gear amidst the sleek minimalism of my apartment, yet he commanded the room. He placed a thick folder on the marble table. "Divorce papers, a full confession, and a contract relinquishing all parental rights to the child your wife is carrying. You will sign them, or the evidence I have of your attempted murder goes directly to the NYPD. Ethan stared at him, bewildered. "Evidence? You have no evidence. It's my word against hers." Jackson just smiled, a cold, dangerous expression. "I don't just have my word," he said, pulling out his phone. "I have a video, crystal clear audio too, of you telling your wife exactly how you plan to kill her. The camera work is a little shaky, but I think a jury will get the picture." A word, he picked up the pen and began to a word. He picked up the pen and began to sign away his marriage, his fortune, and his child. He signed away the last 12 years of his life. As he pushed the last paper across the table, he finally looked at me, his eyes filled with the pathetic mix of self-pity and hatred. "Was it all a lie?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Our whole life?" I looked at the stranger in front of me. "No," I said, and it was the honest truth. "But the ending was." He stood up and without another word, walked out of the penthouse and out of my life forever. In the aftermath, I restructured my life. Clara, my rock through the entire ordeal, was promoted to COO of Verdant Clean. I gave her a substantial ownership stake in the company, a reward for her unwavering loyalty. She had proven her worth 1,000 times over. She ran the day-to-day operations, allowing me to finally step back and focus on what was truly important, my health and my baby. The company I had nearly killed myself to build was now the very thing that gave me the freedom to live. I moved out of the cold, minimalist penthouse that held so many ghosts and bought a warm, light-filled brownstone in Brooklyn with a small garden out back. It was a place for a new beginning, a place to build a home. As for Chloe, Leo broke things off with her the day after Ethan's return. He told her his business was taking him back to Europe and that it was fun while it lasted. He left her with a few expensive bags and a harsh lesson about the fleeting nature of ill-gotten gains. I heard through the grapevine that she dropped out of Colombia and moved back home, her dreams of a glamorous New York life in tatters. I felt no pity for her, only a distant sense of closure. She was a symptom of the disease that had infected my marriage, and with Ethan gone, her power over my life vanished completely. Her story was a footnote in mine, a reminder of the shallow world Ethan chose over everything we had built. Jackson didn't return to Louisiana right away. He stayed in New York for a few weeks, a quiet guardian, making sure all the loose ends were tied up. We spent time together, walking through Central Park, visiting museums, and talking for hours. He was kind, solid, and decent in a way I had forgotten a man could be. There was an easy comfort between us, a connection forged in the most traumatic of circumstances. He didn't see me as a CEO or a victim. He just saw me, Amelia. He made me laugh, a sound I thought I had lost forever. When he finally had to go back to his lodge, he didn't say goodbye. He just said, "I'll see you soon." And I knew he would. 6 months later, I gave birth to a beautiful, healthy baby girl. I named her Hope. As I held her in my arms, I felt a profound sense of peace. All the pain, the betrayal, the fight for survival, it had all led me to this moment, to her. She was my miracle, a testament to resilience. Looking at her tiny, perfect face, I knew I had made the right choices. I had fought for our future, and we had won. The scars from the car accident were still there, faint silver lines on my skin, but they no longer felt like a symbol of what I had lost. They were a map of my survival, a reminder of the strength I never knew I possessed. They were a part of the story that brought me to my daughter. A few weeks after we came home from the hospital, Jackson came to visit. He walked into my Brooklyn home, not as a rescuer or a co-conspirator, but as a friend. He held Hope in his arms with a natural gentleness that made my heart ache in a good way. He looked at me, his eyes full of a warmth that chased away the last of the shadows. "You did it, Amelia," he said softly. "You built a whole new life." I smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached my eyes. "No," I corrected him, looking from his face to the baby in his arms. "We did." The future was no longer a carefully constructed business plan. It was an open page, and for the first time in a very long time, I was excited to see what would be written on it. Ethan disappeared. After signing the papers, he resigned from his position at the university and vanished. I never heard from him again. Sometimes I wonder what he thinks about, what ghosts haunt him in the quiet hours of the night. But mostly, I don't think of him at all. He is a closed chapter, a ghost from a life that no longer belongs to me. My life is here in this sunlit house, with the sound of my daughter's laughter and the steady presence of a good man who walked into the darkness and led me back into the light. The bayou that was meant to be my grave became the site of my rebirth. I went in as a victim and emerged as a survivor, and I learned that sometimes you have to sink to the bottom before you can find the strength to rise. In the end, he didn't just fail to destroy me. He gave me the two things I never knew I wanted most, a child and the freedom to be truly happy. His betrayal was the catalyst for my liberation. He set a trap for me, but in the end, he was the only one who got caught. My story is a dark one, but it's also a story of hope, of resilience, and of the incredible strength that can be found in the wreckage of a life. Thank you so much for watching and for letting me share my journey with you. If you were moved by this story, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And let me ask you this: what do you think is the best form of revenge?